Nova's here, right?
The link.
Muted, but in the call.
Was muted.
Although,
I
Hello.
don't know if I have the link. The link.
Hold on.
Wait, the link for the story?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can post it again real quick.
I just posted it.
Oh, okay. We're live, by the way.
Great. Hi, I'm Sweaty, and this is Scrappy Fan. Wait. Hi, I'm Sweaty, and this is Story Time with Scrappy and Friends.
This is Scrappy Fan.
Hi, I'm Sweaty, and this is Scrappy. I mean, what?
Hi! Hey, what's up, gamers? It's your boy, Sweaty Man 5000. Today we're playing Fortnite.
Gonna see if we can win $1 million.
We can win $1 million. We can steal someone's credit card information in Fortnite and in real life. Today we're robbing someone's house.
Okay.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Story Time with Scrappy and Friends. My name is Scrappy Fan 92, and with us today is all of it. Just...
Hello.
Yes, Lewis has returned after his long hiatus away from us.
He escaped, but not for long.
He should have stayed away from us, not the story.
Oh. Well, you asked so nicely.
I didn't ask nicely, I just asked repeatedly.
Well, sometimes that is asking nicely to certain people. Depends who you are.
With us here recording gameplay for your benefit is our friend Harry.
Pieces of pee.
Pika-pee.
And here, against his will and all common sense, is Tanner.
Probably only gonna be in half this episode.
And once again, regaling us with his dulcet tones is Nova.
Nova. Oh, there you are.
I'm a bear.
Oh my
God damn.
fucking god, Nova, I'm going to kill you. I am going to kill you.
Paralysis demon.
No.
Sleep
no,
paralysis
fine.
demon, yes.
Stop it. Stop it.
Oh my god.
Your time as Peach will return, Nova, I promise. It'll come like in 10 years at the rate I write, but it will come.
Yep.
Alright, last time we continued Ottermelon's story till we make our ascent. And, what happened last time? I can't even remember yesterday anymore.
Yesterday, all my troubles seem so far.
Oh, it was what the second year.
You know the movie Yesterday? My brother doesn't like that movie, but I like that movie.
I loved it. I was waiting for that because it had the Beatles in.
It did, and
Well, the Beatles music.
It is a very corny and goofy concept, but it doesn't take itself seriously enough for me to be bothered by that.
Of course not. Now I can't get that song out of my head now because of that bloody film. As much as I love it.
Right?
The-
It's full and goofy. It's better than Bohemian Rhapsody. I fucking hated that one.
Here's a funny little tidbit. Back a few years ago when that film was being made, there was like a little casting call for people to be extras. I was gonna go, but I had work.
Yeah. You lucked out because that
What?
You lucked out because I hate that movie.
You would have seen me in that movie.
Huh. I guess that's another reason to hate it.
Oh, Tanner.
Wow.
I'm kidding. Look, I wouldn't be this mean if you weren't my friends.
That is true. This is very true.
Okay, so last chapter, Umi and Umi got chewed out by everyone. Like Umi is the worst. She just is there to suffer.
Yeah, I called her out.
Not quite.
That was chapter 6. Chapter
Right.
6, 7. Wait, we're on 8 now.
We're on it now.
So
Yeah. Last one's
chapter 6
7.
when Nico. What now, Harry?
No, I was gonna say, chapter 7 was when it was a bit of a more light-hearted break where like the second years had some time to reconnect.
Yeah, chapter 7 was when all 9 members of Muse actually got together. Shenanigans ensued, and Kotori busted Umi's balls. It was hilarious.
Ooh.
Time.
So Umi's been on a bit of a trauma Congo line at the moment.
Yeah, Umi's life is suffering.
Not quite to the same extent as Subaru, but that's beside the point.
By the way, Lewis, you sound like you're really close to your mic. By the way.
Yeah, he does.
I'm making sure that I've got a clear. I've got a
You sound a bit too close.
Yeah,
Do I-
you're way too close.
Hang on. How does that sound?
Better.
Good.
Right, because I've turned
I
the
think-
volume.
My mother is calling me. Discuss, gentlemen. Discuss
Okay.
about my mother and be mindful of your words.
So how about that porn?
I know, right?
How about this thing called pornography?
So who wants a free Pornhub subscription? I was trying so hard not to spit out my tea.
Free subscription to Pornhub.
Oh my god.
So does my mic sound better?
Yeah, it does sound better.
Yeah.
Because I've just turned down the volume dial on it, so I need to get a new one.
By the way, how do I sound? Do I sound good?
You sound fine.
You sound fine, if a little quiet.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Alright, is that better?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I can hear you, so
Yeah, you're fine on my side.
I need to get a boom on for this bloody thing. Fed up of having it on my desk.
Need to find a place where I can properly set up my pop filter.
I thought you saying I need to find a boomer.
You need to find.
I am the boomer, Harry.
When it comes down to it, we're all boomers.
Yeah.
Boom.
Boom, 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 boom. I want you in my room. Let's have some fun together.
Oh.
Oh gosh, I haven't heard that song in a while.
Venga Boys. Whoa, whoa. Anyway,
Okay.
Alright.
are we ready to get going?
Yeah. I'm
No,
ready.
but let's do it anyways.
Nice one. Tell me when to start.
All right. We have done no vocal exercises this time. We
I
are
haven't.
So sorry.
I'm sorry. I thought we were. I misunderstood how we were doing that.
Hmm.
I
It's
didn't know if we were
my
doing-
fault. I wasn't present when Tanner was present.
It's cool.
All right. There are 2 roles here for original characters that they haven't shown up until now. So anyone who doesn't have a role can jump in at their leisure.
Alrighty then.
I shall be handling Umi and, barring Tanner's absence, Honoka, or if Tanner's absent, Honoka. I guess I don't know. We don't plan anything here.
Yeah, I'll probably have to leave in a bit.
It depends on how long it takes for us to get this chapter done.
Yeah, let's go.
3 hours.
3 years.
There we go. Now you're talking.
Exactly.
You may begin when you're ready, Lewis.
Right. Hang on. Just a sip of tea.
Just a spoonful
Right.
of sugar.
Umi double-checked her phone. On it was the address of the recording studio that Maggie had made arrangements with. The building itself was modest. A plain two-story structure sandwiched between flashier, larger stores. Right now, she had a most recent conversation with Mackie on screen. Mackie.
We'll be here at 10, and recording will go until evening. On a bit of a time constraint, but you can show up whenever. I do expect you to be here today.
Umi.
Of course.
Umi swallowed hard. This was a pivotal moment for the song. Hearing it come to life could possibly rejuvenate or re-inspire the feelings she'd had when she wrote it. That one night where inspiration had graced her, bow-tied, and delivered right onto her notepad. Such a passion project required just that. Passion and love for the process at every single stage. From its humble beginnings to its full arrangements at the hands of a competent studio producer. Though it had been more than a month since she'd initially jotted down the lyrics, she hoped that the hired hands could feel the love she'd poured in thus far. She stepped forward and opened the door. The lobby was plain, and the listless receptionist turned to face her. Without a word, he pointed down the hall, where the muffled crashes of cymbals and deep thumps of a bass drum reached even here. Umi nodded, making her way towards the music. The most ideal recording studios had soundproofed rooms, but she wasn't about to complain about a place that did the job halfway. Maki was doing her a favor, after all. She opened the door to their designated rooms to the sight of many an unfamiliar face. It took her a second to locate Maki, who had crowded around a soundboard, waiting. Crowded around the soundboard along with several other people. Thankfully, she was the first to turn, offering Umi a small but welcome smile. A wall of glass separated them from the adjacent room, where a man hunched over a drum kit, tapping away syncopated?
Syncopated.
Nice one. Syncopated beat.
You are?
Maki said, parting the crowd to walk over and take Umi's hand.
This is Umi.
She announced to the group. Everyone nodded, some muttering a greeting or two.
Umi, this is our recording team for the next week or so. That's Tetsuya-san.
The wiry-limbed, buggy-eyed woman at the soundboard raised her hand.
This is Okura-sensei, my piano teacher.
An unassuming man at the fringe of the group reached out and shook Umi's hand. Maki went down the line, introducing the band and sound team alike. Though the group seemed large at first, by the time introductions were over, Umi realized the team was only 7 people strong, including her and Maki.
Your reputation precedes you, Sona. Your reputation precedes you, Sona. For Pete's sake. Your reputation precedes you, Sona-san.
Tatsuya lowered her large glasses to peer at Umi, who accepted the compliment with an embarrassed smile.
It's nice to see you and Maki-chan make a return to songwriting. Oh, thank you.
Umi bowed slightly.
The circumstances were a bit...
She exchanged a glance with Maki, who shrugged.
serendipitous. But we're taking this as seriously as we took every song we wrote in Muse.
Tatsuya nodded, but she quickly turned her way, pressing her headphones to her ears as the drummer went through a fast-paced sequence.
She said she wants the drums to sound really punchy.
Mikey took up the explanation in the producer's stead.
It's not commonplace in jazz, but she thinks it'll help with the immediacy of your lyrics.
I see.
Umi didn't have enough knowledge of music production to contest the producer's vision. She figured it was best not to interfere. They watched the drummer behind the glass proceed with his take. His part was far from easy. The jazz influences resulted in many offbeat snare hits and unconventional fills. It was a treat to watch, and Umi found herself nodding to the beat with no instruments to hold it up. With the mics feeding into the overhead speaker as well as the producer's headphones, Umi knew that she could spend hours in here without realizing it. Thankfully, they were all here for that very reason. The recording went down the line in its typical manner. Rhythm section recorded their parts first, then the melodic instruments and accessories would build off of that foundation. After the drums and bass finished without many hiccups, Maki leaned over and whispered to Umi.
I'll be the first to tell you. I think I'll have fun with it.
She stepped back, leaving Umi to appraise her uncharacteristically straightforward comment. She didn't have time to, though, as Maki exchanged a nod with Tatsuya before stepping into the recording room as the bassist stepped out.
Maki's playing the piano part?
Umi asked the room at large. Since her old piano teacher was in the room, Umi had assumed he would take the role, but instead he stood by, a trumpet in hand. He turned to her, a look of amusement on his face.
Tell you.
Okura laughed softly to himself.
Maki-chan's had nothing but good things to say about what you two came up with. I'll bet she's I'll bet she's practicing in her spare time.
Umi looked from him to Maki, who was now seated at the keys and warming up with some scales.
I owe her a lot.
She said simply. Okura and the producer exchanged a nod.
That's a two-way street, Sadana-san.
He winked, and before Umi could ask what he meant, the recording began. Maki's headphones were hooked up to a maze of wires, all running back to the soundboard. Umi had enough experience to know that the backing track played in her ears, though with minimal work done to each track up to this point. She posited it was only the drums. It was all Maki seemed to need. Maki's fingers glided across the keys, making her playing seem effortless. The hints of exertion were there if Umi looked closely enough, however. Maki's forward brow and deliberate swaying to the tempo in her ears were proof of her own passion. Of course, the difficulty level required such attention to detail. Only now did Umi hear and realize how far Maki had taken her rough melodic sketches. The piano skipped up and down its 11-octave range, and the left and right hand dancing around each other, sometimes fighting for precedence, sometimes playing counter melodies to one another. It was more technical than Umi would have ever asked for outright. It was certainly impressive, and what more beautiful than Umi could have dared to imagine. But was this what she wanted? For a former composer to do this much for her? And for what? Pinpricks of doubt made Umi's skin crawl, and she rubbed at them hastily, hoping that no one would notice. When she regained the presence of mind to look around, however, she saw that no one had spared her a second glance. Everyone was focused on the pianist at work in the recording room, staring with various degrees of respect and admiration. Umi caught a handful of observations from the group, which drifted towards her and processed slowly in her mind.
Is that me?
I think it's just various background people.
Okay. So this is the Maki-chan I've heard so much about.
She's usually so stern. I almost didn't want to disturb her when she's done.
That's my student. I was worried about how she'd juggle the piano once she left for college, but she hasn't lost a step.
That came from Maki's old teacher. He turned to Umi, who immediately ceased her anxious fidgeting.
Even if Maki-chan asked me to play the part, I would have insisted that she do it.
He explained to Umi.
You know why, don't you?
Something about personal flair and investment, I take it.
The answer was obvious to Umi, but she wanted to hear the perspective of Maki's old piano teacher. He nodded along.
Maki-chan plays like she has everything to lose. Her old teachers called that kind of play reckless, but I encourage it. Piano was her only escape until she met all of you.
Umi flushed at the praise.
She didn't talk much about her home life. We didn't know how much we didn't know how much we meant to her We meant to her until much later, but I think we can all empathize to some extent. Muse was our escape.
Not just for the 9 of you. Maki-chan still finds ways to bring it up, but sometimes I wonder if you realize just how many people you ended up influencing. You brought hope to them just by telling them that you're behind them every step of the way.
Of course, Maki doesn't want to lose that.
It seemed obvious to Umi, but saying it aloud seemed nothing short of a revelation to her. This might have been the first time she'd given it this much thought. Honoka wasn't the only one who still clung to those days.
And I suppose by extension, she doesn't want to lose you. With all of that in mind, there's no way I could hope to replicate or even begin to express all of that just with my piano playing.
It has to be her.
With Maki gracefully playing through a piano part, this had never seemed more obvious.
Maki-chan's a great friend to you. This is proof of that.
He's smart.
Proof of that. Sorry.
He smiled, and Umi offered a terse yet sincere smile in return. When Umi turned her attention back to the music, Maki had already lifted her hands off the piano. She waited for the obligatory 5 seconds before Tatsuya gave the thumbs up, officially signaling the end of her take. Maki opened the door between rooms to a round of greetings and thanks for their hard work. Umi wasn't the least among them.
That was that was amusing, Maki.
Umi offered a genuine smile.
I knew what to expect, but I really can't express how impressive you were.
Maki shrugged.
The praise for later, please. I feel like I'll need to put another couple takes of tape.
Despite her deflection, Umi saw the shortness of breath that resulted from Maki's prolonged focus. She'd put her all into that performance. Considering how some of the other musicians had required a couple takes to get theirs to an acceptable level, Maki's technical skills shone even brighter in comparison. Before Umi could dwell on it any further, though, the technician stood up.
Great work, everyone!
Tatsuya announced, placing her headphones down on the board.
How about we take 5, get some lunch?
Though Umi had mostly observed up until now, the declaration came as a relief. She slipped out unnoticed, instinctively pulling out her phone to take another look at her lyrics, as well as any potential new messages. Umi sat on a bench in the lobby, scrolling through her lyrics. The band members shuffled in and out, exchanging cordial nods with Umi as they passed. She was muttering the words under her breath when a water bottle was pressed into her free hand, making her look up.
Make sure you're hydrated if you get called on later.
Maki took a seat next to her, nursing her own water. Umi's nose wrinkled.
I thought I was just here to watch.
Maki shrugged, casting her a light sidelong glance.
So did I. Plans change.
She opened her own water bottle and took a drink together.
No, you didn't. You knew you were going to play.
Umi grumbled. Once again, she felt like she'd been set up.
It's part of the songwriting process. You have to be ready all the time.
Maki had whipped out her phone already. Umi couldn't help but sneak a glance at her screen, but she was only met with a mess of musical staffs, notes crammed into every available space with seemingly no regard for music theory. It seemed alien to her for a moment, until she saw the singular letters dotting the top of each line. Those were her chords, the foundations of a song that seemed nearly unrecognizable in the studio just moments ago. But to Umi, there was still a disconnect there. How did they get from those simple derivative chords to this?
Can I see?
Before she realized it, she'd leaned far into Maki's personal space, her shoulder practically pressed against Maki's. Maki swiveled and shrunk back, seeing how close they were. Before Maki could follow up with an automatic apology, Before Umi could follow up with an automatic apology, Maki put a hand in front of her face.
You're already looking.
She deadpanned. She cracked a smile a second later, just when Umi was about to launch into yet another apology.
I'm kidding. You want to know?
Umi swung her legs aimlessly, taking a moment to look outside. Here in the heart of Akihabara, many of the building facades still had their Christmas decorations up. This winter was more overcast and drab than snowy. Last night's snow, the Christmas miracle, that had captivated Honokaso, was the only exception.
How did you come up with this?
We talked about this already, no? It just happened.
The swinging of Umi's legs turned into involuntary bouncing. She looked back to Maki's impassive expression, though her purple eyes shone with a mote of understanding.
I'm not into you.
Maki asked. Umi nodded, flushing slightly at how easily she'd been figured out. Maki sighed and leaned back, resting her head against the unforgiving concrete wall. She stared up at the ceiling, and when Umi followed her gaze, all she saw was harsh, artificial indoor lighting.
When you reached out to me last month, I almost couldn't believe it. 2 years is a long time to isolate yourself. And you just called me out of the blue, wanting to meet up.
Maki trailed off, laughing dryly.
I wasn't sure what I'd see sitting across from me. I was looking for the opportunity to say that cliche line.
At this, she gave Umi a pointed look out of the corner of her eye.
You've changed.
Umi quoted for her.
Yeah, you've got it.
Maki flashed her a wry look, which Umi mirrored.
You were going on and on about these lyrics you'd written. And when I took a look at them, I thought you hadn't changed a bit.
What do you mean?
I mean that you're not posturing. Those words are your feelings, and they tell me that you've been struggling on your own all this time. I can't back that up with anything less than a beautiful arrangement, one that lets you express your pain.
Umi blushed fiercely. Maki seemed to realize how much she was emoting, and her own blush soon followed.
Oh, please. Oh, please. It's not like it's any different than our time in Muse. Kotori wouldn't agree.
Umi recalled.
I think she saw my writing in Muse as restricted, like I was holding myself back by writing about topics I knew nothing about.
Umi watched as Maki pored over this new take.
What do you think about it?
Well,
Umi rubbed at the back of her neck, frowning. Which she wasn't sure if there was a nice way to put this.
Say it.
Maki urged.
I'm a judge.
Umi sighed, giving Maki a reluctant sidelong glance. Still, she obliged.
it's hard to write for the feelings of 9 people, or 3 even. The more I thought about it,
She trailed off again.
the more I questioned what it meant to write for myself.
Right for all of us. You didn't show it.
Maki mused.
I wouldn't have guessed.
Kotori said that too. Of course, I had all of your support. But on the other hand, that's what makes me question this project even more. Do I have anything special to say? I want someone to connect with my lyrics above all else.
Umi caught Maki giving her a quizzical look. One eyebrow upturned, and she hurried to correct herself.
Of course, I know you understand them. Your arrangement is proof of that. But when it's all done, I won't know if this song has the power to have an impact on others until I send it out there.
Well,
Maki began, taking her time in coming up with a response. She crossed her legs together while Umi waited.
If you just pretend like you're okay, you're just hurting yourself in the end. That's the point of the song, right? A song that tries to deal with a dreary worldview is important.
Umi looked up. She needed an additional few seconds to process the fact that she just heard this from Maki. She expected this level of earnestness from someone like Honoko or Ellie, not her junior who used to radiate disinterest.
You're the one that's changed, I think, for the better.
Maki furrowed her brow.
Maybe. Since I was going away to college, it was either grow up or fall out of touch with everyone. I couldn't imagine letting go like that.
Umi looked away, embarrassed. Maki sighed.
I mean, I didn't have any underlying drama that I could have used to justify it anyway.
Maki corrected herself.
Besides, all try to support each other, even now, even when we're trying to do our own thing.
Maki didn't say anything for a few moments. Just when Umi thought she was waiting impatiently for a reply, she spoke up again, even more straightforward and honest than before.
Don't you think that's kind of amazing?
Umi blinked.
Come again?
I really think our group is special. It's a miracle that we stayed together like this after high school. You have your own reasons for wanting to see this through, and I want to help you. But I also feel like I'm a bit closer to everyone when I compose like this.
If Umi was at a loss for words before, she was completely dumbfounded now.
That good enough for you?
Once again, Umi didn't understand right away. Only after several moments did she realize that Maki had answered her initial question in an incredibly roundabout way.
I suppose it has to be.
Maki patted Umi awkwardly on the shoulder.
Come on. I'm in the mood for some convenience store sandwiches.
She abruptly stood up. By the time Umi got to her feet, Maki was already halfway out the door.
You're home for the first time in a while, so you should make the most of it. My treat.
Umi decided not to question it. They reconvened at the soundboard 30 minutes later. Umi and Maki were the last to arrive, and the group turned as a whole to greet them.
So, we've got a rough take for drums, bass, and piano down.
Maki said, giving the sound files on screen a once-over.
Not bad for a day's work.
Yeah, I've got. Yeah, I've got them. Excuse me. Yeah, I've. For Pete's sake. Yeah, I've even. Yeah, I've even got them arranged in the earliest of early demos.
Saucia declared from the soundboard.
Or it's too rough to even be called demo.
She trailed off.
We're not done today, are we?
Umi asked.
I thought we were going to record until this evening.
Oh, we are.
Maki gave her a knowing look, which was mirrored by the rest of the crew. Feeling several pairs of eyes on her, a lump of anxiety settled in Umi's throat.
Me? Really?
Umi tried to look everywhere else, but couldn't escape the collective stares of everyone in the room.
What do you think, Sonada-san? Sonata, for Pete's sake. What do you think, Sonada-san?
Tatsuya asked.
We have a decent backing track assembled here. Want to give it a shot?
Umi's first instinct was to decline. She hadn't walked in today expecting to sing, and seeing 7 pairs of expectant eyes on her was reason enough to make her anxious about the prospect.
Oh, I don't know. I still need to look over the vocal melody.
She mumbled.
Come on, Umi.
Maki nudged her shoulder.
Don't you think you waited long enough?
There were a million reasons for her to refuse. All she needed was to pick one of them, and she said it convincingly enough. She could.
All right. I'll do it.
Before the fog of doubt could cloud her mind completely, Umi answered. There may have been a million reasons to say no, but she only did want to say otherwise.
You're right, Maki. I've kept you all waiting long enough.
That's just us. Yourself, most of all.
The recording room was naturally a haphazard arrangement of instruments and microphones. A sea of wires nearly concealed the floor in some places, snaking in and around her feet before she had taken a single step. Umi hadn't stepped foot in a recording studio in years, but she moved naturally towards the room's center, where a mic stood waiting for her. She moved to stand in front of the mic's pop filter, giving her a full view of the crew on the other side of the glass. Umi slotted the waiting pair of headphones over her head, which were bent slightly from excessive use. In the tangible silence, Umi could hear her own blood rushing in her ears. She took a deep breath.
Yourself, Umi. I know everyone says that, but, well, you know.
That was Maki, who borrowed the corresponding pair of headphones from Tatsuya.
Remember what we talked about before lunch.
Express your pain.
Was that really true? Was pain the primary emotion she wanted to hear when she played this song back? Maki's arrangement was a complex and intricate, beautiful, certainly, but painful? Maybe beauty and pain could coexist. In fact, Umi knew this to be true. She'd seen it earlier this week on their old school rooftop. She'd seen it when Honoka stood at the edge of the rooftop, her figure framed by an ephemeral. Thank you. By an ephemeral aura. She'd heard it when Honoka she'd heard it when Honoka asked her if they could ever go any higher. She'd felt it when Honoka stared at her, waiting for her to ask anything she wanted. Umi's heart twinged and ached for Honoka and for herself, but it hadn't broken, at least not yet. She saw the end in sight and chased it. At the very least, Honoka could understand why. Nova?
I'm here.
Did you?
I'm here.
Did I just not hear? Did I just not hear the ready?
Yeah, probably not. Anyway.
I didn't hear anything either, so.
Alright. Ready?
Maki cut into Umi's meandering thoughts, her voice sounding directly in Umi's ears. Umi jumped to attention, although when she raised a thumbs up in response did she realize how much her hands were trembling. These past 2 years had been hard on her, but right now all she wanted to do was let the music wash over her, take her away, and she could worry about retakes later. The track started with a short count-in before the drums started up. True to the jazz influence, this beat relied heavily on the ride cymbal. Played with a swung beat, it was the only sound present on the track for a few moments before the guitar line kicked in. Umi nodded along to this foundation. She'd heard the rough sketch already, but even now, with the sound files mostly untouched, it already sounded much fuller, like it was almost a complete song. The piano came in shortly after. Umi couldn't help but smile when she heard it. Here, the offbeat flourishing arpeggios that Maki played were the perfect complement to the jazzy beat the drummer had laid to tape. They pushed the song forward, building the tension that gave the intro its irresistible quality, establishing the need to keep listening. Umi's first set of lines were simple, a series of
I'm sorry.
It's alright.
Most of the lyrics were screaming.
God. That were meant They were meant to build on the beauty of the introduction. She did so with confidence, and she found that she had no trouble keeping her voice steady. She'd grown accustomed to the silence of her apartment, which had greeted her every single day. Some parts of her had believed that she'd never be back here. The recording process in Muse was long and arduous, taking many hours out of their afternoons and evenings. They'd argue over the amounts of takes they needed, picking each other's singing qualities, and said countless harsh things to each other in the process. But somehow they'd always arrive at a final take, with radiant voices and perfect harmonies. This was different, but what didn't change was how comfortable Umi felt in the soundproof room. Though there was a whole team of people watching from the other side, she felt she could express herself properly without judgment.
Oh man, we're doing this. Okay.
Oh God! Wait,
All right,
never
I
been
can do this.
Okay,
Yeah!
you can do this, Scrappy. Channel your inner idol hell.
Exactly.
Scrappy,
All right.
Scrappy is the newest idol member. Let's go.
Yes.
Done.
Wait, what'd you say, Harry? Wait, what did you say, Harry?
I said you're the newest idol member.
Oh, okay, let's do this. Koko ni ite sono shinka ni itiharu no kaika ga owaranai tokoro sayana. Wait, what? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was in Japanese.
Oh God. To be fair, that was pretty brilliant.
That was pretty good. Just use that.
But honestly, I feel like my Google translated Japanese thing is probably better than my English singing.
To be fair, also Nova's muted himself, muted and deafened.
That was
Doesn't want to
legitimately.
hear any of this.
That was legitimately all right, though. Gonna be honest.
That was pretty good.
You can sing Japanese way more convincingly than I ever could. I just sing gibberish.
So when we're gonna hear Scrappy's latest J-pop album?
I want to hear you cover Snow Halation.
I
Yes!
need to do that. I need
Maybe at the end.
I'm holding you to this now.
I need you to do caramel dancing in every language. In every language that song was released in.
All right, let me try this from the top. 3, 2, 1. Stay here, stay in the moment when the blooming of spring never ends. Let's go down by the willow tree, roll with the hills till we make our ascent.
That picturesque scene came to life in her mind as she sang, unhindered as she was by the things that usually held her down. Nerves, anxiety, isolation. None of that mattered in this first verse. It was just her and the music, and it was her job to work in tandem with the accompaniment, to provide the spring-like imagery it promised. Her voice was smooth, with or without the uncertainty she'd expressed only minutes before.
All I imagined is all that I see. Gardens of flowers and a warm summer breeze. There's a place where no trouble is seen. Everything's perfect.
Halfway through the second verse, everything proceeded as planned. The chord progression was the same all the way through the fourth line, which signaled the first distinctive shift.
But it's all just a dream that I have when I sleep through a winter that never ends. Oh gosh.
That utopic, serene vision came crashing down, revealed to be the wistful dreams of the narrator, Umi herself. This abrupt reveal was accompanied by a tonal shift. The key suddenly changed. The guitar and piano working on a steadily descending chord progression, leading all the way into the first musical interlude. It was certainly true that the song was different. Umi didn't have 8 more vocal tracks to cover for her. For the others to master imperfections in her voice and for her to do the same. She was on her own, but the natural ease with which she hammered out a vocal melody was undeniable. She allowed herself a smile as she sang, and the recording continued on without so much as a hiccup.
We made a lot of progress today.
Mackie didn't look up as she scrolled through her phone.
Maybe tomorrow we can add the guitars and trumpet before we start on the third verse.
They were on the walk home, having parted with the rest of the team before they left the studio. It was getting dark earlier than ever, and everyone had agreed to head home before 5 o'clock.
How about the harmonies?
Umi asked.
I think the intro I think the intro would sound much fuller with a chorus of voices behind it. Even if I'm just singing Oz at that point.
She was still feeling the after effects of the hopeful rush she'd experienced at the mic, though she suppressed her smile now. Mackie tapped her phone against her chin.
Want to do those yourself? I bet we could get a group of Umis on that intro by the time it's all done.
Umi pursed her lips. She wanted to disagree outright.
No one else wants to sing? You sounded pretty good on the homemade take you gave me a couple days ago.
I was just a placeholder.
Mackie shook her head.
We all have our dedicated instruments this time around. Didn't you notice?
It was a small detail, one that Umi had dismissed as trivial, but everyone had claimed their own instrument, likely during the planning process. Umi nodded.
What about it?
Your instrument is your voice. Simple as that. Whether it's 1 or 5 of you, you're the only one for the job. So own it.
Mackie left no room for arguments. Umi could only nod, though she hardly wanted to protest in the first place. That meant she could spend more time in the studio. She looked up. Streaks of dark grey were laid over the already drab sky. The tall buildings and skyscrapers that surrounded them obscured any possible sightings of pastel colours.
Could you repeat that last sentence? It
Sorry.
kinda drowned out at the end.
Okay. The tall buildings and skyscrapers that surrounded them obscured any possible sightings of pastel colours.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm still surprised that you got everyone to come out the day after Christmas.
Umi changed her subject, recalling the ease and readiness with which everyone put their parts to tape.
I phoned in a few favorites. That's all.
Mackie shrugged.
Besides, lots of musicians are just itching to put something on tape. Brush up on their technique, that kind of thing. Plus, I think that everyone's even more optimistic now that we started putting everything together. It sounds great.
I might be a little optimistic myself.
Umi allowed herself a small smile.
Good to hear.
The rest of the walk was blanketed in comfortable silence. It wasn't long before they were on Umi's street, but Umi stopped shortly before they reached a house. Maybe it was the heady optimism that stuck with her from the recording studio, or maybe it was the insistence of Honoka herself in continuing to dodge the topic. But Umi had to come home to set things right. And though she still wasn't sure what that entailed, establishing how Honoka saw her was a good place to start. The same went for how she saw Honoka. The days spent in the darkness of a lonely apartment had blurred together until they become months and then years. Umi had been home for less than a week, but with Honoka so close, a day hadn't gone by without her mind screaming and at her to do something. Her anxiety told her to continue avoiding the topic, but Umi knew what was on Honoka's mind, because it was on hers as well.
Can I wait for you?
Mackie asked, several feet away, pulling Umi from a momentary reverie.
No, you go on ahead. I'm going to talk to Honoka.
Mackie raised an eyebrow, looking from Umi to the familiar storefront and back again. Instead of questioning it, though, she simply nodded.
Now's as good a time as any.
She gave voice to what Umi had realized on her own. That gave her some assurance. Even so, Umi chewed on her lip. Already she felt the familiar sensation setting in. The way her heart dropped into the pit of her stomach, the crawling of her skin, the bout of lightheadedness, the dark tendrils of dread that grabbed a hold of her tongue and refused to let go. Still, Maki was right. If not now, when? Umi clenched her fist, which did nothing to help her. The optimism she'd felt just minutes before was fading fast, but she couldn't run forever.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Maki lingered for a moment longer, shuffling her feet. Umi wasn't about to question it until Maki reached out and gave her another stiff shoulder pat. Despite the awkwardness of the gesture, Umi found comfort in its sincerity. She smiled and nodded, sending Maki on her way. This was the third time in 4 days that Umi found herself pacing outside Honoka's house. Every interaction they'd had in that time went well enough, but she still felt butterflies crowding her throat, suspended in her stomach, threatening to spill over and leave her collapsed on the ground.
Stop. Honoka doesn't hate you. You're better than this.
Umi squeezed her eyes shut and waved her hands in front of her face, hoping to dispel the nausea tasted in the back of her mouth. Once her heart rate had slowed to an acceptable level, she went over what she was going to say. She'd rehearsed it to point of tedium last night, but revisiting it now with the buzz of anxiety in her head and in the throat, it seemed a little too insensitive.
Honoka, we need to talk. Echo. Too harsh.
Umi muttered.
Honoka, about the night I left.
She knocked her fist against her forehead.
Too direct. Honoka, I can't look at you without thinking about...
Umi groaned.
No. Umi-chan?
Umi snapped up. At some point, when she was pacing and muttering to herself, the door to the shop had been slid open. Honoka stood in the frame, staring at her with a mix of surprise and concern.
Hello, Honoka.
Umi forced out. Her ears burning as she realized that Honoka had probably witnessed at least some of her anxious rambling.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you are going to be Honoka for the rest of this, I might just go.
All right, we thank you for your service, Tanner. Have a good night.
Yeah.
Take care,
Not to
mate.
be rude.
What?
Not to be rude, but
No, it's fine. If you have to go, you have to go.
Where were we?
Her embarrassment was only exacerbated.
Right. Her embarrassment was only exacerbated by the stilted nature of her greeting, all too reminiscent of one just 4 days prior.
You should be past that awkwardness by now.
She told herself that, but perhaps Honoka was telling herself the same thing. She stood there, her hand drumming restlessly against the doorframe, her feet shuffling about.
Want to come inside?
It almost seemed to Umi like an excuse to break the silence, because she won't be out here for any other reason. Still, she acquiesced with a acquiesced with a sign and nod.
Sure.
She followed Honoka in, fidgeting with her hands. Otherwise, they'd shake themselves into oblivion, and she wanted to come off as composed as she could. The thoughts racing through her head were proof to the contrary, but she took hold of one at a time, focusing on them to keep them from backing out now. This needed to happen, for better or for worse. Honoka turned around and gestured to the counter.
Want anything? It's on the house. No, thank you. Still stilted Umi. How have you been? Any plans for the new year? Better. You're getting there.
Honoka looked at her for a moment too long. Maybe Umi wasn't giving her enough credit. Honoka had to have picked up on the nervous ramblings, the hyper-awareness of the other's actions, the careful skirting around each other. Without a word, she turned and started towards the staircase. Umi felt her skin prickle as she followed, silently praying that she wouldn't have to pounce upon the dreaded topic right away. Thankfully, Honoka soothed that fear, if only for the time being.
No, not really. Just gonna visit the shrine a couple times, eat some food, and try to stay up. But I didn't do that last year. The staying awake part, anyway. You'll have trouble staying up until midnight.
Umi allowed herself the smallest of smiles.
You sound like you're turning 40 next year, not 20. Hey, I need sleep. I need my sleep too.
They reached the landing, and Honoka shot Umi a grin over her shoulder.
I need someone to go. I need someone to go with to make it worth the time, you know.
Umi's smile faded. Honoka didn't seem to realize the message underneath. That she'd had no friends to celebrate with, and her family had just turned in early for the night. Sure, Umi herself had spent last New Year's Eve cooped up in her apartment, but she didn't want to go back to that place again. Not when she'd come this far already.
Would I be imposing if I asked to go with you?
Honoka stopped outside her door, fiddling with the handle. She looked up, her smile soft, like it was ready to flicker out at any moment.
Of course not, Umi-chan. You're my friend, so how could I say no?
Another round of butterflies crawled up Umi's throat, choking her next words. Honoka was so direct, so blunt, that Umi couldn't help but wonder if she was being sincere. If she was just putting on a front, acting like they could keep this up even when Umi had hurt her so badly. Umi was dying to know the extent of damage she had caused. How many times had Honoka checked her phone, expecting a new message or notification from her? How irreparably had her heart fallen into her stomach with every false alarm? Umi tried to envision each time Honoka had taken out her feelings on Kotori, eliciting concern yet fearing that she'd come off as a burden. How her thoughts would run wild to the point of panic, waiting until she was alone in her room so no one would see her crumble. How self-absorbed had Umi been, knowing that Honoka had been in so much pain but too afraid to fully accept it. How had she, for even 1 second, thought it was okay, for the best even? Honoka stood in front of her now, waiting patiently for a response. This couldn't last. Not knowing was agonizing. Umi forced a smile.
I'll gladly go with you.
Honoka smiled gently. It was a painful contrast to the image of her in Umi's mind.
Thanks.
She jerked her head towards her room.
Come on.
Her voice was almost a whisper.
There's not much to do here, though. Hope that's all right.
Umi nodded meekly, forcing a lump in her throat down.
That's never stopped me.
She meant it playfully. She didn't know if it came out that way, but Honoka smiled nonetheless and let her in. Honoka's room was as unchanging as ever, fairly messy but still easy to navigate. Umi settled in as best as she could, kneeling at the same time she'd sat at same table she'd sat at so many times before. Honoka passed the table over and flopped down onto her bed.
Maki and I just came back from recording.
Umi explained.
It's going well. I'm happy to be back in the studio, really. Awesome!
Honoka's eyes lit up.
Maybe next time you could take me along? I miss it too.
Umi was somewhat taken aback. Honoka deserved to hear the final take above all else. Her opposition to the idea must have shown on her face because Honoka waved her hands in front of her.
I'm kidding. I can wait until you've got the final cut. Excuse me. I can wait until you've got the final cut on a shiny CD.
She assured Umi.
Or on your phone, whatever floats your boat.
Umi forced a smile in return. But for the life of her, she couldn't find a way to continue this thread of conversation. Honoka's hidden pain and heartache took precedence above all else, especially here in her room.
Umi-chan, what's wrong?
Honoka questioned, her usual volume dipping out of genuine concern. Even this little detail made Umi start tearing up. She didn't deserve this. If Honoka felt like she did, then she had to know why. And if she didn't, then Umi still had to know why.
Where do I start with that, Honoka?
Honoka's back straightened almost imperceptibly. but Umi was keen enough to pick up on it.
Huh?
I know you want to hear what I've been working on, but there's something else we need to address first. I mean, what? I'm sorry. I'm having that. It's the same as last time. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Go on.
I know you want to hear what I've been working on, but there's something else we need to address first. Really, Omi-chan, are you okay?
Honoka laughed. Whether she was trying to play it off or avoid a conversation entirely, Umi didn't know, but she didn't care at this point.
When I was gone, were you thinking about me?
Honoka blinked, her mouth falling open in a soft "oh."
Oh.
Yeah. Before she could process fully what she'd heard, Umi stumbled over herself to explain.
There must be something you want to say to me, Honoka. Several things, probably.
Honoka said nothing. She hardly even moved, and Umi wondered if she'd heard her at all, or if she was just taking a while to process this.
But why now?
The cheerful front that Honoka put on was starting to fall away. Sitting up on the bed, she pulled her knees close to her chest. Hugging them tightly, it seems to Umi like she was trying to shield herself from what was coming.
Because I know it's been on your mind. It's been on mine too, ever since I came back. Yeah.
Honoka dipped her head slightly. Her eyes flickered between Umi and some far-off thing that Umi couldn't see. Umi took that as a signal to continue.
Honoka, I want to apologize.
Umi bowed her head. Even now, she was afraid of how Honoka would respond, and she couldn't even bring herself to look.
Apologize for what?
Honoka was going to remain stubborn until the bitter end, but Umi didn't detect any shakiness or apprehension in Honoka's voice. She screwed her eyes shut and pressed forward.
Everything.
Again, Honoka said nothing. Umi drew in a deep, shaky breath. There was no going back now.
Disappearing for a year and a half, not sending you any updates, never coming home, trying to cover it all up with schoolwork, isolating myself. Jeez.
Her list of transgressions spilled forth like a flash flood, no longer inhibited by the forced courtesy and willful ignorance she'd put on for Honoka. There was no way she could stop now.
Leaving in the first place after you said you...
The thought of declaring Honoka's love aloud made her heart constrict, forcing her to stop. She clutched at her chest as discreetly as she could. There was no way she could hide it.
After you confessed your feelings to me.
She finished feebly. Umi looked up. Honoka looked away, but not before Umi spotted a flash of hurt in her eyes. Her heart ached again. Honoka's smile was still plastered on her face. Now, though, she was staring at nothing in particular. Only after a moment did Umi realize that she'd adopted the same distant gaze from a couple of days ago.
I see. So that's why you came here today.
Umi had run through a shameful amount of scenarios in her head, but none of them accounted for the oppressive silence that now bore down on the two of them. She began, already losing confidence but upon hearing her own awkwardness.
I'm sorry if this is out of the blue, Umi-chan.
Honoka cut her off, not with force, but with a grave quietness to her voice that made Umi climb up immediately.
You look like you're bending over backwards just to talk to me. I know when you're hurting, and this is my fault too. I was just happy to see that you were back, that you wanted to make up with me. So I thought that would be enough for me too. No, you mustn't blame yourself.
Umi dug her nails into her shirt, balling up the fabric to avoid fidgeting any more visibly.
I thought the same thing, and it's been so long I didn't even know how important it still was to you. It's okay.
Honoka said, though her measured tone told Umi it was anything but.
We really messed up, haven't we?
Though her delivery was even, her eyes shone with an unhindered longing that Umi could understand all too well. It wasn't resentful so much as wistful, The naive desire of someone who wanted to just forget it all and try to move on anyway.
Yeah.
Umi managed in a strained voice. The painful memories clogged her throat, making it difficult to speak.
Uh,
Onika forced out a laugh, and it was stiff and inappropriate to Umi, and judging how the ghost of Honika's smile rapidly faded, she felt the same way.
do you want to go first, or should I? I don't know.
Umi admitted. Part of her wanted to spring to her feet and run. Honika's discomfort was on full display, thinly masking a layer of heartache, whose existence Umi had only recently acknowledged. Umi didn't want to see her like this. If this escalated, Honika's words to her would surely be ringing in her head for days to come. But if she ran now, that would only prove that she hadn't learned anything. She didn't want to put Honoka through that again. Not when she'd come here to do the exact opposite. Rather than listening to her worst instincts, Umi stayed rooted in place as Honoka pored over what to say.
When you when you left, I don't think I truly accepted it for a long time. I saw the note you left me, and I don't really remember what happened after that.
Honika's eyes glazed over, and her voice had dropped to a monotone. It was unsettling to see her like this, and yet it was merely a byproduct of her heartache.
I just sort of did the bare minimum to make sure no one would worry about me.
She continued.
I ran the shop, sat around a lot, avoided looking at my phone. Mom and Yukiho noticed, but I always waved it off. And the days went by like that. It felt like I was just watching myself exist, or something like that.
Umi chewed on her lip. Dread and anxiety manifested in every minute minute movement she made. Even the stare she affixed Honoka with belied her nerves.
I felt the same way.
She admitted.
And it was so easy for me to ignore everyone's messages. No one ever called me directly or asked to come visit. So I cut to myself, thinking it would all go away. But it didn't.
Honoka finished for her.
No, I really wasn't ready to move away.
It seemed so obvious, now that she'd said it. But to some extent, that was what her actions had boiled down to. A selfish, short-sighted desire to reach for the naivety of her youth.
I wasn't ready either. You already know that.
Honoka agreed.
But I had no reason to drift away from everyone. Not when they could just drop by whenever they felt like it. Kotori-chan was the first to actually call me.
Honoka fiddled with the phone, tapping at the screen idly. It was clear that she was just biding time while she figured out what she'd say next.
Eventually, I returned Kotori-chan's calls. I feel really bad looking back on it.
She said. A sad smile played at the corners of her mouth, but Umi blinked and it was gone.
I didn't realize. Pardon me, I caught a yawn.
Sorry.
I didn't realize just how bad it all was, how I wouldn't be able to handle it until I was telling her everything. It made me cry. And she started crying. I felt like a burden. She didn't actually come home to see me for a few months. I didn't want to cause a fuss, so I didn't tell anyone else. Except Yukiho. She was even less happy about it than Kotori-chan.
Umi flushed, looking anywhere but at Honoka. Now that she mentioned it, Yukiho didn't seem to be home, and Umi was grateful for that.
Sorry.
Honoka managed an awkward laugh.
I think she's still pissed at you. That's not her fault.
Umi said. Honoka didn't contest her. The conversation came to a standstill, and Umi wasn't sure how to get Honoka back on track. Of course, the longer she was there, the more she wanted to escape. Suppressing her more selfish instincts, she let Honoka collect herself. When Honoka did continue, she had once more adopted a faraway expression. Umi imagined that Honoka had practiced what to say once she returned, lest she risk their conversation devolving into a yelling match. Perhaps this was her way of dealing with it.
There wasn't much I could do. You never reached out, and the last thing you said to me felt so final.
At this, Umi drew in a sharp breath. Her heart felt like a pincushion, with hot tears welling up in her eyes. She wanted to explain herself, but Honoka went on, either oblivious to a plight or too occupied with what she wanted to say. As she did, she rested her chin atop her knees, withdrawing completely.
I was counting the days until you came back. I thought you were doing the same, maybe. First, I thought First, I thought that you'd come back for summer. Then you didn't. Then I thought you'd come back for Christmas. You didn't. And I started to worry too that something had happened to you, that you'd become unrecognizable, or that you'd gotten in some sort of accident.
Honoka wiped at her eyes hurriedly, but they came away dry. Umi didn't like the sight, but she remained silent. Interrupting Honoka would only agitate her further.
I hated that those were just as horrible to me. Wait. I hated that those were just as horrible to me. I think I hated that those thoughts were just as horrible to me. I hated that those scenarios were just as horrible to me. That you changing too much would be almost as bad, if not worse, than you being gone for good. I hated myself for thinking that.
Hate. That word, so decisive and jarring in nature, sounded especially alien coming from Honoka. Had Kotori been right claiming that Honoka hadn't changed much? Seeing how distraught Honoka was, though it was only a mere glimpse of the years of heartache, made me think that the answer wasn't as simple she has or she hasn't. The real answer was much murkier and difficult to discern.
But I couldn't help it.
Honoka continued.
And that's also why I never reached out. If something that had happened to you and you gave me an answer I didn't like, I don't know what I would have done. I felt the same way.
Umi said. The searing pain in her chest spread to the back of her throat. Even the mere act of breathing was difficult for her. She was rooted in place at the table, hardly daring to move an inch.
But you weren't counting the days, were you?
Honoka asked. Her eyes, once so bright and cheery, still shimmered, but the light behind them had darkened considerably. They carried a gentle sadness, the result of day after endless day of self-pity and frustration. Umi couldn't bear to see it, but she also couldn't bear to lie.
No,
Her voice constricted again, remorse glowing at the back of her eyelids. She had to keep it together now. If she started crying, she didn't know when she'd be able to stop. Honoka kept her composure. She had to as well.
I wasn't. I couldn't think of how much I was hurting you.
Honoka looked up again to stare at her. Her lucid blue eyes conveyed everything else Umi needed to know. Hurt, betrayal, anger. But Honoka no longer had the energy to expend on those things.
At some point I thought that would have been my last memory of you.
Honoka spoke with resigned acceptance. That Umi was here. Hearing those words now couldn't change the fact that Honoka had truly believed it would never happen. They sat there in silence. Honoka, for her part, was patient, letting Umi decide where they would take this. If Umi had thought that their conversation on the rooftop was difficult, at least it had been much more liberating. She'd seen how much Honoka had changed, and yet they were still able to share moments like that. Moments to be treasured and looked back upon with fondness. Here, in the familiar confines of Honoka's room, she felt like she was trapped, a novel sensation that set her nerves alight with anxiety. Honoka's soft, understanding eyes brought Umi back from her thoughts.
Were you were you waiting for a good opportunity to tell me
Umi asked, somewhat dreading the answer.
about?
Umi flushed again. No, but again, she struggled to articulate Honoka's feelings for her aloud.
About your feelings for me.
Again, it felt like a cop-out.
Yeah, I waited for a long time. A really long time. I really had no idea. Yeah, I know, you didn't.
Another round of shame rattled Umi, and she shifted aimlessly in her seat. Neither she or Honoka had moved from where they were sitting, and she couldn't help but feel the palpable difference between this conversation and their encounter a few days ago, on the rooftops of their old high school. She felt a dull ache in her neck. A dull ache in her heart as she watched Honoka drift from point to point on the rooftop. But it was an ache that they shared. Honoka seemed to fit in with the distant glow of the city lights. In a section of the city that once welcomed the relentless pursuit of her dreams. Both Honoka and the city's constant hums had felt distant, visible, but always out of reach. There was nothing here that inspired such nostalgia in her. Honoka was curled into herself, yet each word that she spoke was like barbs on Umi's skin. Umi desperately wanted to hold on to that rooftop conversation, but it slipped further and further away the more she took in Honoka's broken, hollow state.
Can I ask why?
Umi murmured, barely loud enough for Honoka to hear.
Why did you choose me? Why did you choose me? I thought about that too, and here's what I came up with.
Umi waited, hardly daring to breathe. In a way, she saw this as Honoka's definitive answer, whether her feelings matched up to how Umi saw herself, and whether they outweighed the pain they had inflicted on the young woman she'd once called her best friend.
Even
Honest.
when we were kids, I could tell that you and I were really different. At first, it was just a matter of school or personality or whatever. Everyone who looked at us for 2 seconds could tell. As we got older, our differences got even more obvious. You started to talk about college, and I could see how excited you were to grow up and be successful and all that stuff. On the other end, there was me. I wasn't in any hurry to grow up. I didn't care much for any of that. You've heard it all before. But you still stuck around me, and I never could figure out why. I mean, I'm dumb, and I'm probably going to be stuck here for the rest of my life. You're meant for better things. I started, I started, I started to think that maybe I was holding you back, but I never said anything because it made me really happy to see you stick around. I thought I was lucky to see the person you were becoming. The luckiest girl in the world, even. And that's when I realized that I wanted to see it all. To see it all. I wanted to see the look on your face when I made you happy, when you were only focused on me, or when you found out someone, or even when you just wanted to tell me about your day. It wouldn't have been enough for me to just see it from a distance. I wanted a part in it too. I wanted that person to be me. Anything else would have been.
She sniffed, though her eyes remained dry and her voice level.
I don't know what I would have done. You were right. When you came back, I had so many things I wanted to say to you. Lots of questions and some not so nice things. But more than anything else, I just wanted to see you.
Despite what seemed to be her best efforts, Honoka spoke with fondness, not for their current situation, but for the memories that she suddenly clung to. Only now did Umi realize why Honoka's intentions had been so difficult to pass over these past 2 weeks. The oddly knowing stares, The warmth with which she'd looked at Umi and the careful, thoughtful responses had caught Umi off guard. Honoka herself was conflicted. The slow, agonizing fracturing of her heart grappled with the deeply rooted affection for one of her oldest friends. Asking anyone, especially Honoka, to untangle years of love, pining, and pain and articulate them properly was nothing short of impossible. It would be unfair to ask that of her right now.
Am I what you expected? Am I that person that you saw I was becoming?
Umi balled her hands into fists in her lap. She braced herself for the answer, squeezing her eyes shut. Honoka bit her lip. She ran her hands absently across the top of her knees, but when she answered, it sounded like she practiced the exact response many times over.
No, you're not. You're a lot sadder.
Umi had braced herself, but Honoka's bluntness still sent her reeling. A week
Oh,
was all she could manage.
but you're still you.
Honoka went on.
When you came back, of course I was nervous, but I was also happy that I still recognized you, that we could still connect.
Umi nodded slowly.
When you showed up, when you showed up to take me out a few nights ago, I was relieved as well. If I had let us drift apart until we were strangers, I never would have forgiven myself.
Honoka didn't offer a response. For a second, Umi wondered if she'd said all she needed to say. That seemed outlandish to her. She'd seen the flash of hurt and resentment in Honoka's eyes just moments before. Yet Honoka seemed content to sit there as Umi silently wrestled with her dissatisfaction. How did Honoka feel about her now? Finally, Honoka dispelled her worries, which simultaneously shattered the illusion of comfortable silence.
There's more, isn't there?
She asked plainly, perceptively. Umi's ears burned with embarrassment. Even though it had happened so many times now, she resented how easily her friends were able to see through her.
I'm done hiding, Umi-chan. I know you are too.
Honoka went on, in that maddeningly even tone.
So go ahead, even if it's hard for both of us.
Umi collected herself. This conversation had been difficult to sit through, but considering how it hadn't descended into a shouting match, Umi had to wonder when the dam would break.
How do you know what you felt for me was love?
Up until now, Honoka had only described her feelings with a sort of indirect fondness. Not once had she implied that they had brought her anything but heartache and pain. But Umi couldn't accept that. She wanted to hear it at least one more time, if only to hear the complete vulnerability and catharsis that she'd only heard in shades since.
I love you. I don't.
Honoka said bluntly.
But I felt something different for you. And I don't know how to feel anything unless I'm. Excuse me. And I don't know how to feel anything unless I feel it 100%. Felt?
They'd been speaking in the past tense up until now, and Umi didn't know if this still applied to the present. She had to know for sure, and she had to admit that the possibility tinged her words with the most imperceptible traces of hope.
And what about now? I mean,
Honoka looked down, and Umi's brief fantasy of hope went with her.
I can't look at you without thinking of what you did.
Even compared to the thoughtfulness and tact with which she'd acted during these last few days, her words here were almost robotically even, like she'd been practicing them in preparation for this very moment.
Even even now, I'm sure you're trying to make things right. I believed you when you said you wouldn't disappear on me again.
Honoka continued, but Umi found herself struggling to focus. Honoka's voice went in and out of focus. Umi already felt her heart sinking, even when her body and mind struggled to catch up.
Doesn't change how I felt all this time.
Honoka finished at some point. She looked more vulnerable than she ever had, killed into herself. Her posture contrasted grossly with her delivery.
You can't forgive me.
The words fell, icy and leaden, off Umi's tongue, dropping helplessly to the floor.
I can't. I see.
That settled it. The resulting silence in the room was oppressive, smothering anything else Umi wanted to say.
I'm so sorry, Honoka.
Umi had more than sufficient time to prepare herself for this sort of definitive rejection. Yet a blanket apology was all she had to show for it. She resented how inadequate she sounded and felt. Desperate for something more tangible, she kept going.
I know I don't deserve it, but Umi-chan,
Honoka kept her eyes down.
it's hard on me when you say stuff like that. I want to feel bad for you, and I do, but I don't want to hear your excuses. You've made me feel like I don't matter. I know. Do you?
Honoka challenged even this. She finally looked up again, but Umi wished she hadn't. Hurt was clear on her face and sharp on her tongue. That scared Umi more than she ever wanted to admit. Honoka had her cornered. Knowing this, her own front crumbled to nothingness. At some point, she had started crying. She didn't know how long she and Honoka sat in silence. The hole in her heart, which had laid dormant all this time, spread viciously and without remorse until she felt it in her very fingertips.
I think you should go. I'm sorry.
Honoka looked away. Even when Umi's tears started to fall uninhibited, Honoka offered no solace. This was what it felt like to have her heart break in real time. Surely Honoka felt the same way weeks after Umi had left her. In some twisted way, it was comforting to be able to understand what Honoka was going through. The irony of finding comfort in their shared heartbreak would have made Umi laugh, if it didn't hurt so damn much. Umi staggered to her feet. She didn't have the mental capacity to look back. With the searing pain that crushed her heart, the image of a hollow Honoka withdrawing into herself would have sent her to her knees once more. Somehow, through a blur of non-stop tears, she had made it home without incident. Shutting the bedroom doors behind her, she promptly sank to her knees, quiet sobs racking her body. This self-pitying spiral was all too familiar to her, but never before had the pain been so acute. The day hadn't even ended when Kotori let herself into Umi's house, heading straight for her room. There she saw for herself the sorry sight that Umi made no attempt to hide. The tear-stained pillows, the small pile of used tissues, and the crumpled-up ball of despair that was Umi herself. Taking all this in, she had only one thing to say.
Umi-chan, what are we going to do with you?
Umi, of course, didn't have the answer. She didn't say anything, preferring to replay Honoka's words to her over and over again in her mind. Each subsequent recollection sent her head spinning anew. Sometime later, Kotori left. Umi wasn't sure how many more words to exchange in the interim. It was all so muddled, so distant already. If she simply kept Umi's silent company, Umi would have appreciated that the most. Words were too complex, too easy to misinterpret, and quick to hurt.
Is that end chapter?
End chapter.
Alright.
Yeah.
An end of Umi's life.
Oh!
So I've said this before, but this was a chapter that broke me and Lewis.
Yeah.
And I want to hear what you guys thought of that.
Yeah, I need to know you guys' impressions of this.
Honoka just ripped her heart out.
Kalima.
Yeah, that was a fatality, basically.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, it was cathartic for Honoka.
I can imagine,
Yeah,
like
there's a lot of emotions that you just want to she just wanted to get out for so long.
2 years of resentment and like pain.
Yeah.
The fact that she disappeared on her just like that after after she'd pretty much poured her heart out to her, you can imagine how she'd felt.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Dang, romance is overrated.
Romance is fucking complicated, more like.
Yeah, it really is. It's not something you can just be all like happy flowers and happy days all the time.
I don't think it's anything that can be scientifically understood fully.
No, it can't be.
No,
No one can.
You
absolutely
can
not.
no.
You can't explain it.
Science is
But
good
you know
at
what can?
what?
But you know what can be explained though?
What?
Pretending to have feelings for someone only to just to make them feel good for that night is the worst possible way you could possible way to
Yeah,
dodge responsibility.
yeah. You don't do that.
There's not it's not it and the thing is that it's not even like a common occurrence that like we usually like we as a people do for someone that we do like but we don't necessarily like romantically. It's like but if we don't if we don't share the same feelings, then like 99 out of 100 times we just say we don't share the same feelings. So she wouldn't even have that excuse to say, oh, it's just something people do. That's
Yeah.
not something people do.
Yeah. Oh man.
Now I wish Tanner was here. I want
Oh,
to hear his. I
God.
want to hear his thoughts.
I really want when I think on the next episode we should try and get him to like we should see what he thinks of the previous one.
He could always like look at the playback.
But I still want to hear it from his mouth though.
Yeah. We got one more chapter after this, so
This is the kind of thing that I want to hear somebody say through voice, because sometimes it's not it's text might be a good way of conveying things, but it's definitely not the best way. And for something like this,
it's text will never be able to convey emotions the same way that a voice would. And even then, it's hard to know the tone that text is coming out with a lot of the time.
it's like you could be reading it in one way, and you could be reading a certain bit of text in one way, and the person writing it could have been meaning it an exact different way.
Yeah. It's easier to know when you hear like a tone of voice.
And yeah, exactly. And it's like it said at the end of the chapter: words are too complex, too easy to misinterpret it, and quick to hurt. It's like,
Yeah.
especially if they're going through text, like you don't know what's going on the other side of the keyboard.
Yeah.
I don't know who I feel sorry for more, to be honest, in this situation.
Mm.
Yes.
That's the
Yes.
thing. That's the thing. You just feel sorry. There's
Yeah.
no really anything you could do to unanimously pick one side. You just
Yeah.
feel sorry for the whole thing.
Because
Of course.
I remember just reading this, and just feeling really empty, because I usually read stuff like this, shortly before I sleep, so I kind of just had like a empty mind, at that point, and it just felt really sad. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what to think after all that. I have to really like compliment Watermelon again though, because the fact that he's managed to bring up all...
I don't know if Watermelon's a dude.
You never really know for sure because it's like a lot of like some. Hang on, let's have a.
I have looked at like the.
Let me have a look at the profile.
The profile has no gender given.
Right.
Well, I mean, I've seen like he has like a YouTube channel and a Twitter profile and whatnot, and I'm pretty from the things I've seen, he's definitely a guy, unless you know.
Well, yeah, that kind of is why I'm advising against assuming. Well, thank you, Watermelon, for kicking my heart in the dick, to quote an abridged series. My heart. It's just...
Oh god.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
Once
like
again, you have emotionally destroyed me, so thank you.
yeah, I was gonna say like I love the fact that Watermelon has managed to use these kinds of like mature themes and played them as straight and realistic as this has been, and it just kind of feels right. Like it's very maturely written, and it's done in a surprisingly
True to character.
yeah, it doesn't not they don't feel like they're our character or anything, and the way it's done is again just surprisingly mature. Like I remember like finding this. Oh god. Oh okay. I remember finding this story for the first time, expecting some just heartfelt romance, and that was basically it. But yeah, not so much.
What the fuck was that?
Me wheezing at the idea of this just being a simple fluff story.
Yeah.
It's a lot more than well, it's a lot more complicated than that.
Yep. I didn't know what I was expecting, but what I read definitely was not what I was expecting.
Yeah.
Yes, Watermelon has gotten the character personalities down to a T. Like Honoka's line of "I don't know how to feel anything else. I'm feeling 100%." That's her. She never half-asses anything, and unfortunately for her, that means mixed messages for Umi. At least for that one night. Like even she doesn't know how she really feels about Umi or how she felt about Umi. I won't say there's any true. Actually, hold on. There are no true villains in this scenario, but there aren't any true heroes either.
No. It's not as black and white as that. It's like like Nova was saying earlier, like you can't really choose who to be more sorry for. Like it's difficult.
Yeah, because it's not like it isn't like well, I guess to put it basically, it's not like oh, it's like there was some sort of little interlude where Honoka was wanted to do something for Umi, but she wasn't able to pull off very well, and it ended up resulting in a much worse consequences for her than she ever intended. Like, but that never happened. It was because it was purely Umi who made the major mistake that she made that night. But at the same time, while you understand why Honoka is so hurt and is still hurting to this day, quote unquote, at the same time, while you understand that, you can also see Umi is trying the best she can in the in the ways that with using the kind of knowledge and experience that she has and whatever she knows offhand, or rather what first comes to mind to her, she's trying her best to try to make things right, but it's not really right now. Honoka can't really find it in her to easily give her a second chance because she is she's understandably pissed off, but she is still pissed off about it. So
Yeah.
it means I mean, could have made. I mean, could have she made? She could have made. Could have she possibly worded it a little bit nicer to uh, give the same message, but not necessarily make Umi feel like complete garbage? Maybe, but uh, but the fact is that she held like like you described. She holds nothing back. If
Yeah.
she feels one way about something, she feels that way. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
No matter no matter what it is. But that's true. That much is also true to Honoka's character. With anything,
Yeah.
she doesn't hold back, and unfortunately, whatever she was feeling at that particular moment just happened to be. So,
Exactly.
but it was rightfully so, given what Umi did to her 2 years ago. So,
Honoka not holding back is partially how we got into this mess.
well, pretty much, what goes around comes around. But it's like, you know what I mean? It's difficult to discern, like how, what the big catalyst of what happened truly is.
Okay, sorry for changing the mood, but I love how we're talking about all of this, and then Beanie Boy 14 just comes in with poopy butthole.
Oh, nice!
I didn't know Nico had a Twitch account to describe Umi.
Oh, God damn it. Oh.
I can sympathize with the devil to an extent. If my best friend confessed her love to me at midnight in their room, I'd be horrified as well. I wouldn't ghost them for 2 years, but I would be very.
I would be a little bit shook, depending on
a little shook.
A little bit shook, yeah. It's depending on the context of if it happened to me, it'd be a mix of the context between our relationship and my own feelings at the time.
Oh, hey, Lewis, thanks for inviting me to your house for a sleepover. I love you, Scrappy. What?
Yeah, that I can understand why that would shake you. To be fair, and it would shake me as well. But why the
Okay.
As far as reactions go, Umi did not have the best, and I think we've already established that.
Yeah.
No, that's not cool, Umi.
As far as reactions go, that was the worst possible.
Yeah. I mean, I would to be
before kissing, I could kind of respect that, just to maintain their friendship.
Pissing off to college, and just ghosting her for 2 years. That is kind of.
Yeah. It's I mean, I'd probably be really confused on what to do in that situation too, but
But can you really say that? Can you really say that with anyone anyone you really like, but not necessarily romantically, can you honestly say that you would actually pretend to share the same feelings just for one night to make them feel better?
Yeah,
I
like
No.
you don't do
tell them
that.
outright. No.
Yeah.
And here's the additional monkey wrench. Umi doesn't even seem to know where she stands with Honoka.
Yeah.
So it's not a case of she definitely doesn't share the feelings. It's a case of where the fuck is she at the moment?
It's like it's
Yeah.
like one of those things where like you've never thought about someone that way, so you don't really know what you think about like you don't really know what you think about he or she like romantically because it's never
Of
been
course.
like brought up before.
And this is why romantic relationships in the workplace do not happen. Just
Yep.
so awkward.
I mean,
Well, not
didn't that happen with Sakurai though? Like he met his wife in the workplace.
I have no idea.
I think so.
Pretty sure that is. Like it can
Sakurai
happen.
is the
But
exception that proves the rule always.
it can it can
well,
happen.
let's see, but yeah. It's not, yeah. See, the thing is that it can happen, but however, you need to take it even more carefully than you would any like most other romantic relationships because
Yeah.
you need to stay professional on your job as well while still maintaining the relationship and still being able to still see where it's going. And if it's going well, then you still need to be careful about it because you want to be able to keep your love and your job. You shouldn't have to choose one or the other if it really means that much to you.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, if you end up like breaking up at any point and you both still work at the same job, like that's just incredibly awkward at that point.
Trust me, I've seen. Where I work, I've seen. I've seen that shit happen, and I've seen the aftermath, and it's not pretty.
I'd imagine so.
It's like you don't know whose side to pick, if any. That's why I try to remain neutral,
Yeah.
because shit like that can get too complicated, and I sometimes just can't handle it.
Yeah. Again, romance is a fickle mistress.
And sometimes it just turns into a he said she said as well, and that's
Yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned the work.
You mentioned the what now?
I said the workplace, but really I just meant I should have said within a friend group because
Oh yeah.
yeah, just as fraught, honestly.
Yeah.
Fraught.
Yeah, it can.
Yeah.
And this is why it just get like when I see two celebs dating, when I see news of two celebs dating, it's just like this could either end very well or very fucking horribly.
Yeah.
Well,
and which is why I was a bit cautious when I heard that Taylor Swift was dating Tom Hiddleston.
Oh, I didn't even know about this.
But this was ages ago. I don't know what's happened to them at the moment, but it's like she's gonna get another full fucking album off that guy. I swear to God.
Oh gosh. Okay. What was I gonna say? What was I going to say? Oh yeah, I feel like I alluded to this earlier, but yeah, teenage emotions are very confusing. Umi and Honoka were, for all intents and purposes, children when this happened.
Yeah, we've all been teenagers before, so we know how weird teenage hormones can make emotions.
Which is also why you need to. Which is also why part of comes with raising a child well is also when the time comes, teaching them things about romance so that they have a better understanding. So when the time comes, and they may end up in a situation like Umi did, maybe they be less likely to make a stupid mistake like that.
Yeah.
You know,
they don't teach.
Go on.
Yeah, I feel like schools and parents in general need to teach that kind of stuff more because they usually just don't touch on that stuff and leave it for us to figure out. And to be fair, there are some things that you can't really teach very well, but I feel like it needs to be touched on more than it is right now.
The thing it's like they're readily available. They're readily able to like teach sex ed, but what they don't do is the shit that leads up to it.
Yeah, because like you grow up like with like Disney movies and all this other stuff, thinking that romance is like this really happy thing with nothing can go wrong and whatnot, and it's not. It's nowhere near that simple.
Of course,
In
it's
Disney's
not.
defense, I watched Aladdin series, and that was at least a somewhat grounded way to just. What am I trying to say? I watched Aladdin the series, and that was a somewhat realistic depiction of an ongoing relationship. So that was something.
I mean, I'm
Really?
not here to like rant on Disney movies or anything like that, but you know.
It's like if they want to watch anything fictional that'll give a grounded approach to like relationships, just put Toradora in front of them, and they'll be fucking set for
I
life.
knew you were going to say that.
I mean,
knew
it's
you were-
true.
That was on my mind too. Like, I don't want to say too much because these guys I assume haven't seen it, but it's the most grounded romance show I've seen. Where
I think it's one of the most grounded pieces of like. I'm not going to go this far, but it could potentially be one of the more grounded bits of like fictional literature in its context when it comes to relationships.
In terms of like romance, I think it's the best one. It's the best show that does it, at least from what I've seen.
It's definitely surprised when I first saw it.
Yeah. Hey, maybe we'll find.
Yeah, this whole episode has just been a commercial for Toradora. You're welcome.
Maybe we'll find a fic for that show at some point, but that might not be for a while.
It depends.
I
Then I would be going in blind for once.
I would prefer. Yeah, I would prefer at least Scrappy to have seen it before we do that.
Never.
You will watch Toradora.
No.
And there will be no answering back to me, boy.
Because the thing is, you go into a fanfics for that show. It's gonna spoil a lot of things.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Anyway, final thoughts.
My final thoughts are that Umi and Hanoka should have just watched Toradora before deciding on anything.
Oh my god.
Final thoughts. Well, this is the second to last chapter that currently exists, so I don't know where this is going. I'm scared.
Yeah, I'll save final thoughts overall for next time, but yeah. This definitely needs to happen. Just let it all out there.
And to any young people listening to this, and I don't know what our demographics are. I hope there aren't young people listening to this. I guess general relationship advice. Just talk to your friends.
Talk to your friends and just talk in general.
You need a healthy relationship comes down to communication at the end of the day.
Yeah.
The worst they can say is no. But
if you like somebody, don't leave it a what if. Believe me, I've done it that enough fucking times.
That's no good.
Just talk it out. You'll feel far happier if you do before doing anything rash.
Preach it.
Because sometimes you dip. Sometimes you dip in the middle of the morning like you just did the deed, and it goes for 2 years.
Umi be like, I'm a dip.
All right, all right, Konoko, I'm just about to head out.
She went for a cigarette run. She never came back.
Alternatively, she went to the store for some milk.
Yep.
Yeah, just replace the letter and just have it say, I'm a dip.
Umi has left the chat.
Oh my god, this is bad.
Yeah. But
Yukio
yeah,
is coming for blood next chapter. I can feel it.
I appreciate how Yukio reacts, because like, that's pure like sisterly love right there.
even if isn't she like the youngest one as well?
She's the
She's
younger
the
one.
younger sister.
Yeah. I appreciate that, because like, you know, you can feel that she really cares.
She does, and it's just really unfortunate what with what happened, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like I just really one thing I hope is that I'm not hoping for complete sunshine and rainbows at the end of this fic, but what I do want to see is at least some sort of resolution between the two.
Yeah, I like the ending definitely needs to feel earned at this point, I feel.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's got like two. At the moment, it's got like two chapters to go.
Yeah. Unless Autumn decides to put more in, but
I've seen it happen.
that's up to them.
I don't think my voice can handle it.
They're gonna call in Yoshiko to be the relationship mediator. It'll be great.
I mean, speaking
It's
of
Yone!
speaking of Yoshiko though, we are definitely not doing this right away. But Autumn has actually done a story of the Verges in Sunshine.
What, in the same kind of...
It's not the same kind of story. It's like... It's like basically the Verges kind of just doing their things before they
Graduate.
yeah, graduate and go their separate ways, and Mari tells them to all make like this letter just to bring out all the emotions and things that they need to get out or whatever. I don't know, like I don't know when or if we'll be reading that, but it's definitely not going to be anytime soon. I'm going to say that much. It's only three chapters though, so.
For now. Imagine writing 2 stories concurrently when I can't even finish one.
Mood.
I mean, we need to find something at the very least after next week. Scrappy? Yeah, I'll ask you specifically since this is your.
Yes,
like,
I will marry
series.
you.
Oh my god.
Now I'm glad I crashed the wedding.
You can't handle the truth. But no, seriously.
So,
God damn it.
But no, no, seriously though. Since this is your story, Scrappy, did you want to have like a break after next week when we finish this in quotes, I should say?
that depends on how everyone's feeling and if I can find a short story to follow up on in time.
Okay.
Maybe I actually finish my chapter and we go back into that.
Oh yeah, Luigi
And
breaking
maybe I'll
bones.
get $100 in my mail.
Yeah, boy, Luigi breaking bones. Let's go.
Oh, Lewis, you weren't there for the Mario stories.
I think I was
experience.
there. I think I like tuned in for a stream of one of them. Or
Oh
something.
yeah, you were there for like the 3rd episode. You were chastising my in-universe avatar for being a jerk.
I remember like turning on my mic for like 2 seconds saying "Get wrecked, son" or something like that.
I can't even remember chastising that in-universe avatar.
It was the chapter where it was a chapter where the characters were waiting for the next chapter, the actual next quote-unquote canon chapter, and they were just imagining what the author was doing in the interim.
You got abducted by aliens or some crap.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah. I think I remember that.
Like, I remember looking at that chapter, like, and, like, seeing, and then Scrappy got abducted by aliens, the end, like, wait, what?
You just, I don't know anymore. I don't know is the slogan, as Tanner would say, of this entire show. We miss you, buddy. Also, I'm just reading your Twitch chat, Harry, and what's going on?
I have no idea. Okay, you want okay?
I need to get in there. I need to get in there. Hang on.
They haven't said anything for a while, but do you want to read the things that's been said?
I don't know, Harry. I promised my mother I'd be a good boy today. Beaner Boy 14. First message, poopy butthole, as we established. Next message. Oh gosh, can you scratch my bum? Their words, not mine. Harry, Beaner Boy, please. Beaner Boy, hello. Harry, concerned emote.
I don't know. Like what?
I like how we're having this fan fiction within the fan fiction. It's just this is what I live for.
Also, I forgot you're playing Trackmania Turbo, Harry.
Yeah, and failing miserably at it.
We need to do a stream of that at some point.
So yeah, no idea what we're doing after the next chapter. We are free agents again, and that terrifies me.
I'll tell you what. I'll have a look around and see if I can find anything good to read.
Yeah.
Tanner has been itching for a Sonic story. He
Oh
really
God.
wants to.
Let's see if I can actually get a Sonic story that's not memed as fuck.
We could find something.
If I can find something, I want to get Harry's approval on it.
Okay.
I'm gonna see if it can't. I'm gonna see if it's gonna get as heavy as. I'm hoping that what I do find isn't as heavy as till we make our ascent.
Yeah, I need some. I need some levity as a counter, and
I think we need something
I really
a bit
need
more.
to see Tanner go nuts with Sonic characters.
I think we need something more, not necessarily more comedic, but definitely more lighthearted than this.
I'll have a look.
Like Chapter 6 of the Super Mario Show by Scrappy Fan 92.
Yeah,
it's coming in 2024.
I'm glad I crashed the wedding.
We should find a ReZero fanfic. That'll be funny.
No! Oh my god, they're not ready.
I've never actually.
You two are ready.
I've never looked up a ReZero fanfics before. I have no idea what kind of.
I'm gonna get
there is.
season 2 spoilers if I try now.
There's probably gonna be a lot of REM stuff.
Oh, there will be REM stuff.
Likes the maid.
Yes.
Yeah, but not everyone likes the pink-haired maid.
I kind of like her snarkiness.
I do, yeah, but it's yeah.
I have one old Pokemon fan fiction we could read. It's very short and it's also fluffy, but it's unironic fluffiness.
I could find some Pokeshipping fanfic.
No, you're joking, but I've read an Amore shipping fanfiction. It's good.
Fair enough.
Really? Have you seen that? What's it called? I might have read it.
I can't remember the name, but I'd have to scour Cerebi. Is Cerebi? Yes, I'd have to scour Cerebi's Amore shipping forum. Yes, they have forums. They have little forums for the shipping communities because that's what they do.
I lose track on what shipping name is what a lot of the time.
Amore shipping thread V3. Let's have a look.
Harry, Pokemon fandom is in Ouroboros. Just you can look at it like how to describe it. It's an abyss. You can look into it and it'll look right back.
It'll stare right back.
Exactly.
So,
Go
something.
on, sorry.
No, what is it? Like Fube's advert? Like something suck their guts out.
The Frobes.
Yeah, what was that?
Let's have a look.
What's the phrase again? Like, like something suck their guts out. I think.
I don't know the context for this.
Mm. Rip their heads off and suck their guts out!
There you go. There you go.
Sounds like a Kabutops. So,
I have
yeah,
no
next
idea what's
week.
going on with this.
Apparently, this changed the slogan
Oh.
to take their tops off and eat it all up. That does not sound any better. to me.
Nah.
And there's
Take
our
it off.
demonetization.
I mean, I'll eat it all up, all right. I mean,
Oh gosh.
someone was horny when making those phrases.
Yeah, Lewis, you're banned.
No!
That's enough hentai for
next
you.
week we will resume the as of now final chapter of Till We Make Our Ascent. Ottermelon, we thank you in advance for all of this material, and it is good material. Do not let our everything fool you.
And whatever the hell those comments were on the Twitch.
Thank you, everyone, for letting us into your homes once again. This has been Storytime with Scrappy and Friends, the 15th episode, apparently. I can't believe we made it this far. We hope you join us for the 16th and final episode of Storytime with Scrappy and Friends.
For now.
No, last one forever. This
No!
is the end.
Yes, we will leave your houses, so you don't need to call the FBI on us.
We thank you and we bid you good night. Actually, Nova, any final thoughts?
Well, I have one main one at least. Folks, this is a prime example why you need to, when your kids start getting to that age where their hormones start acting up and more feelings start to come to light, this is why you sit down, talk with them about them, and help them to understand it better. Not understand it completely, because there are some things you need experience to really truly understand. But at least for the fundamentals of it, teach them now, or you're gonna regret it later when all they have is a broken heart.
So
Maybe if
so Nev, what you're saying is that people need to understand the concept of love.
Understand.
Maybe if Honika's non-existent father had actually taught her well, we wouldn't be in this mess.
I wonder if the manga actually does anything with the dad.
I highly doubt it.
I didn't even
Anyway.
realize I had manga.
Yeah, it's like it's like completely different, I think. Anyways, though, yeah, that's basically. I keep failing this map, so screw it. Yeah. See you guys. Next week, is that right?
Next week, barring the apocalypse or
Fair.
boredom.
Well, boredom.
Fair enough. Is that it?
We
You
thank-
Yeah. Yeah. Forgot what we're gonna say now. Yeah. Have a good night, and we'll see you next week.
Yep. We need to get Tanner caught up.
We do.
Definitely.